Send Deepa and Andrew.
Good afternoon. I think I'll call to order the meeting of a Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee. Welcome, everybody. Great to have you here. My name is Cam Gordon. I'm chair of the committee, and I'm joined today by council members Johnson, Fry, Glidden, and Bender. That's a quorum of our committee. We have a lot of items on our agenda today, or more than last time anyway. We have 4 consent items and 5 discussion items. I will first describe and move the consent items, and my colleagues up here can feel free to move something if they have questions about it or any concerns. The first item is coming from the City Coordinator's Office, and it's to approve the City Council appointment of Eduardo Cardenas from Ward 9 to the Minneapolis Community Environmental Advisory Commission. Second item is approve a resolution and refer to IGR to amend the City of Minneapolis legislative agenda to include support for phasing out triclosan from consumer products in Minnesota. The third item is approving 6 reappointments to the Minneapolis Advisory Committee on People with Disabilities for terms to expire December 2015. The 6 are Harvey Hoffman from Ward 7, Kenneth Rogers from Ward 3, Amanda Temple from Ward 1, Terry Craik from Ward 9, Aris Leo Omar Megana from Ward 4, and Heather Mead from Ward 13. And the fourth consent item is to authorize execution of a memorandum of understanding with Healthy Housing Solutions and accept a total of $22,500 to fulfill the services outlined in the MOU. I will move all 4 items unless anybody wants to pull anything for questions or comments. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Those items pass. Now we move on to our discussion items. The first is our annual report from the Homegrown Minneapolis Food Council, and I'm going to ask our Homegrown Minneapolis Food Council Coordinator, Jane Shea, to come up and kick us off on that presentation. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Chair Gordon and council members, my name is Jane Shea. I'm the coordinator for Homegrown Minneapolis. And as Chair Gordon said, this is our annual report that we give to the committee. Before we start, I'd like to ask the Food Council members here to please stand. I know we've got some of our members are here. Thank you. So presenting today, we have 3 members of our community. So we have the 2013 co-chairs, Beth Dooley and Mustafa Sundiata. And then we have our 2014 co-chair, which is Russ Henry. And a second co-chair will be elected on Wednesday at our next Food Council meeting. So we just have 1 co-chair so far for 2014. So, and then in addition, we'll also have Vish Vasani from, who is a Center for Disease Control Fellow, working at the Minneapolis Department of Health, and she'll also present today.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you, Chair Gordon and members of the council. I really appreciate this opportunity to present to you what we've accomplished over these last couple of years. As you may know, we kicked off with Homegrown Minneapolis in 2008. We're now in phase 3 of Homegrown Minneapolis, which is the work of the Food Council, and we've accomplished much in the last couple of years. As you may know, Homegrown Minneapolis is a citywide initiative expanding our community's ability to grow, process, distribute, eat, and compost more healthy, sustainable, locally grown foods. And Phase 3 is what we're engaged in now. I thought I'd backtrack a little bit and share with you a statement of our vision. The Homegrown Minneapolis Food Council envisions a vibrant, local food system that enhances the health of all residents, protects the earth, increases economic vitality, expands social connectedness, and improves food security. To support all of Minneapolis's residents and increase access to food quality, we're addressing hunger, food insecurity, we're connecting people to the food system, and we're connecting sectors of our food system in ways that have never been done before. And I might add that we're really on the cutting edge, and other cities are looking to us to see how we're doing this. So we keep evolving, and we're delighted and really excited about what will happen in the next couple of years, given the new appointments to the Minneapolis Food Council. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Russ, who's our new chair, co-chair.
Thanks, Beth. Thank you, Council. It's wonderful to be here and be able to talk a little bit about the future of the work at Homegrown over the next year. So we do have, as Beth mentioned, a greatly diversified food council this year, and we're really looking forward to expanding the equity work that we do. You see, food is a shortcut for locally grown food is a shortcut for people's personal health empowerment. And when people's health choices and decisions are empowered, then their life has that much more power and their community has that much more power. And so the work that we're doing, of course, it all relates to equity. So as you can see, we've got 15 community member representatives from various professional sectors and from all areas of the city. And then we have 6 city representatives from various departments and council offices. And with that, I get to hand this off to Mustafa Sundiata, our former co-chair from last year.
Thanks, Russ. Greetings to all of you, council members. Like everyone else has said, it's a delight to be able to talk about what we've done for the last couple of years. But I want to talk a little bit about some 2013 highlights. Talk about some working groups which without a lot of the work wouldn't get done, right? And to emphasize, these working groups are really community driven. So we had one working group, Staple Foods Ordinance, which consisted of the Food Council and community members, were surveyed. 100 small retail food outlets to assess availability of healthy foods and potential impact of changes to the ordinance. Land access and urban ag, community engagement also was another working group. The biggest highlight was in advocacy. Last year we sent letters and or passed resolutions in support of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board Urban Ag Plan, actually 2 letters. Paid access to city water for commercial farmers, support of B ordinance changes, healthy food policy and park board facilities, and the mobile food grocery stores. Woohoo, I'm a big mobile food grocery store fan. All right, meetings were held at, and this is very important, getting out into the community to really engage the community. And as you can see from these places, if you know these places, they're all over the city. Hope Community, which is doing huge work over South. Youth Link, which is a teenage homeless. It used to be called Off Streets, is what it used to be called. Now it's Youth Link, and it's right not too far from downtown. Sabathany over South as well. And St. Olaf Community Center over North, which is doing huge work in that neighborhood over North. And I was a North Sider, so I'm very familiar with the work that they're doing. And they're all doing fabulous work. The city's food landscape, 25 farmers markets, 212 community gardens with 13 city lots leased to community gardens, 700 food resource hub members. I get to help build up the food resource hubs, and it's wonderful to see that it's at 700 members. 12 urban farmers and related businesses, 48 community kitchens, that's huge. 30 healthy corner stores, a 2013 city tree program, had 100 Honeycrisp apple trees, 75 cherry trees, and 150 serviceberry trees. So over 300 trees were edible trees. And I think that's a huge thing. I am going to hand it over now to Vish.
Good afternoon. So I'm going to pick up on some of the points that Mustafa just mentioned on the previous slide about the city's food landscape. The first is Minneapolis has a very vibrant farmers markets community with a total of 25 farmers markets and mini markets. And what's interesting to note is that this model of mini markets as a way to get food to low fresh food access areas is very unique to the city of Minneapolis. In addition, 11 of the farmers markets are equipped with EBT or electronic benefit transfer systems. And as a result of the EBT efforts, thousands of Minneapolis residents now have access to healthy foods at our farmers markets. In addition, Jay helped secure grant funding, which led to a proactive partnership between General Mills and the West Broadway Coalition to expand EBT usage by the Hmong community in North Minneapolis. This picture illustrates community gardens in the city of Minneapolis, and though this illustration shows 21.5 acres of land in a total of 106 community gardens, recent numbers from Gardening Matters illustrate that there are 212 total food-producing community gardens in the city of Minneapolis. And lastly, as part of its efforts to increase access to healthy food, the Minneapolis Health Department worked with Gardening Matters to launch the Local Food Resource Hubs Network in 2010. This program provides members with the necessary resources and education to grow, preserve, cook, and compost their own fresh produce. Currently, there are approximately 700 members who are participating in the Local Food Resource Hubs Network. And what's really exciting to note is that with support from the Minneapolis Health Department, Gardening Matters has been working with liaisons in 3 different cultural communities, the African American community, Latino, and Hmong community, to better give them access to the Local Food Resource Hubs Network and subsequent gardening and urban ag resources in the city.
Thank you, Vish. She said that much better than me. So anyway, we want to wrap it up a little bit with our 2013 annual open house and our mayor's selfie. Approximately 300 individuals attended the Homegrown Minneapolis open house event. We handed out, I think, 5 Homegrown Hero Awards, which was excellent as well. Very community oriented. 4 community partners actually got 4 of the 5 awards. We had a huge turnout. The Walker was a wonderful venue. The youth that showed up, as you can see in the picture, was just an awesome turnout as well. So let's talk a little bit about some examples of possibilities for the 2014 Food Council activities. So as you can see, support revision and adoption of new standards for city staple foods ordinance, support passing of the mobile healthy food store ordinance, work to change CPED policies, RE land use for community gardens and growing food, expand curbside organic waste collection citywide, and advocate for local and state policies that enhance pollinator habitat and protect pollinators. And that is it. Are there any questions? And I'll step back and let us all.
Okay, I think there are some questions. I also just want to thank you so much and the outgoing chairs, Mustafa and Beth, for the great work that you did helping getting the Food Council launched and started and going so strong. Really appreciate that. I see a question from Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first, I just want to say thank you so much for your work on behalf of all residents in Minneapolis. It's incredible to see all this great progress, and it's such an important issue. So thank you for that. I actually have 2 questions and a statement, so I'll try to be brief on this. I know there is interest in doing a public forest forage. So it's intentional planting where individuals can come through and basically choose food. It's a great asset and amenity, I would think, for the community. So I'm curious if there is any involvement with that and if you've had any conversations.
Councilmember Johnson, as a part of the urban ag plan for the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, having a foraging forest is one of the options. So that's on the list. I'm not sure it's the first thing they're going to do when they approve the plan this spring, but it's something that they want to work towards, figure out the best location, how you manage that so it's not completely trampled and that sort of thing. There's also been talk about doing something here in the city. And I think one of the issues we have to determine is, where is the land that we can put it on? And you obviously want something that's permanent, not a temporary use. And so I think that I would say there's interest in it. I've been part of conversations with other people about that. And I think it's a question of just kind of figuring out some of the legal and procedural, ways of doing it.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm also curious, I know satellite farmers markets are one of the wins that came out of the urban agriculture ordinance changes that we had in the plan. And I haven't seen a ton of them around my area in Ward 12 yet, and I was wondering if there are any efforts to try to create more of those or incentivize those or bring about more of those within the community so we have a more distributed local food model.
Currently, the way it works is the group will get organized, so they might be coming from, say, a church or like a senior citizen community, and so they approach the city and ask to put something together. So, that is something that, the mini market thing is a little bit tougher. We've had some start and fail, and part of it is the economics, that for the farmers to be there for a period of time, they need to sell a certain amount of produce. And I think that's partly why we're seeing a move towards more mobile food options, such as a mobile grocery store, mobile farmers market. So we haven't done, a lot of outreach yet, and part of it's just a staff capacity issue. But I think we will see those markets evolving as we give more options to people through the mobile food vending.
Excellent. Thank you. And then the last thing I was going to say is I'm very excited to work with you and my colleagues as well on trying to come up with a strategy around land procurement for community gardens in our city. And, it's remarkable looking around. I think we are all so happy with our world-class, best-in-the-nation park system, and that's only here because individuals 100, 150 years ago saw that, had that vision, and set that aside for us to enjoy. And I think often of what we're going to be leaving the next generation, and this ability to have food security in our own hands, to have a place for every young person to get their hands in the soil, learn where their food comes from, connect with it, establish those healthy eating habits is such a highly important thing. And I would hope that that's a priority for most, if not all, residents of Minneapolis. So I'm very excited to work with you on how we can identify south-facing lots that don't have too much shade and that have good soil, and how we can, in some ways, consolidate and have 2 or 3 lots together, and how we can have longer leases and things like that. So thank you so much for calling that out, and I look forward to that work together on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Cano has questions or comments.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Gordon. So I just wanted to thank everyone here that's been involved in the Homegrown Minneapolis Initiative. I feel very lucky to be a part of a city that's so visionary and is really taking risks and leadership in this area. It's imperative not only for Mother Earth, but also for our 7 generations coming down the road. So thank you so much for everyone that's worked on these efforts. I do have kind of a question, and I'm not sure who might be able to answer it, but as new city council members, we've embarked on strategic planning sessions, and we're talking about sort of learning from different cities and different efforts across the world that are doing this kind of work. I know that in the racial equity bucket of work that we do at the city, there's been a lot of exchange with the Seattle folks that have been doing a lot of work on racial equity. So I'm curious to know if the food justice efforts, the sustainability efforts of our city have recently taken maybe like a learning trip or a delegation of folks to learn from another city, another state, to really kind of get our hands and minds around what other groups are doing and how maybe they're pushing the envelope on some of these questions, and just kind of just to be clear, I've been working this idea with a few members, including the chair, the current co-chair of the council. So Russ, Henry, and I and other folks had a meeting this morning where this question actually came about. So I don't know if anyone can speak to that a little bit.
Shay?
Thank you, Councilmember Kano. I'm involved with a group of food policy directors from different cities, so we do some sharing with each other on how different programs are going on. I would say I think the equity piece is certainly an ongoing topic, and it's a learning edge for all of us. We really tried hard to do a better job recruiting this last fall, and I think we saw some of the benefits in terms of who applied to the council. So I think that given the Food Council membership, that's really going to be a priority. And we are often engaging. I know we were involved with this study this summer around economic development with food and how we bring communities in. So, we're at the beginning of the process, and I think it's certainly something that's front and center. And I think the advantage is, as we've matured a little bit, and we're now in our third year of the council, we're getting a better handle on the food community here, what's working, and then where are the places where we really need to put an emphasis. And I think food justice and equity is certainly one of those top areas.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just note that when there was a major food justice conference a couple years ago in New Orleans that I went to, and some of us did, and Julie Ristow, one of the founders, has been very involved in that. And I was delighted to find when I got there that we had city presenters there with our Healthy Corner Store program, trying to share that information about how that's helped us get, attack the food deserts and improve the distribution system of healthy food. So I think it's something that's been close to the hearts of many people involved in this for a while now.
Sorry, and just a follow-up question. Is there a strategic planning session planned for just the homegrown efforts? Yeah? Okay. Sure. Yeah, I would love to hear more.
Sure. We're just starting. We just had our orientation last month, and our meeting Wednesday, we're going to start going through the community feedback from our open house and some of the work we did last year discussing that. And probably by March, we'll be doing much more focused activity plans and that sort of thing. So we very much will be doing some planning.
Okay.
Yes.
So the Food Council itself will be engaged in that, and I think that's fantastic. And people should know that all the Food Council meetings are open to the public. They're often, frequently, if not always, held in different locations in the community. And also the Food Council establishes work groups typically that are also open for full participation and involvement of anybody who's interested. And for people who are interested in getting more involved and they want to tap into some of this, what's the best way that they could do that?
Go to Homegrown Minneapolis, and you can either email me or our newsletter's there, and we always publicize the meetings along with other things in the community. But you can always get in touch with me.
And we are looking and needing a lot more people to get involved. All right. I see another question here from Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Chair Gordon. First, I'll just echo everything that Council members Kano and Johnson just said. Great job, guys. And second off, I just wanted a definition for two words or phrases that you had on your slides here. One is healthy corner stores, and the second is community kitchens. Do you have a definition for those, by any chance?
Maybe I can mention the healthy corner store relates to, and maybe there's a more precise definition that Vish has too, but the amount of fresh produce that you have, it actually is connected also with our stable food ordinance. So one of the things that we did several years ago, we actually required more fresh produce in order to be a grocery store and get your grocery store license. But what we found was some of the corner stores weren't able to accomplish providing the right variety and quantities of fresh foods and produce. So we created a program with money from the state, through the state health improvement program, where we actually went out and supported efforts of those corner stores and helped give them some tips and lessons about marketing and give them access to where to get the food. So that's when we kind of used the line healthy corner store to relate to those ones that we thought were selling the appropriate amount of healthy foods.
Thank you, Chair Gordon. Perhaps is there a quantity or a percentage of fresh produce in those healthy corner stores?
I think currently we're trying to raise it to the WIC standards. If we did that, it'd be 30 pounds of fresh fruit and vegetables. So I could let someone from the health department talk about what the current, I don't know, but I could get it for you. But
If you don't have it now, that's fine.
Oh, five different
Five.
fruits and vegetables, right.
And then community kitchens.
Community kitchens are kitchens where they are a commercial type kitchen, such as a park board kitchen, maybe a school or a church where people can use them for, the idea was if they want to do any kind of processing or canning. And then there's a couple kitchens that are a licensed kitchen where if you're, if you want to sell, like if you were a food vendor or somebody like that, then you'd have to be at a licensed commercial kitchen. So we've got a kind of a variation on that, but kind of, and also a business incubator. You know, it would be also great if people could start there and sell at the farmers market. So.
Thank you. And do you have geographic locations of where these numbers are located?
In terms of the community kitchens, yes, I could get you a map of that.
That would be wonderful, just
Sure.
to ensuring again that some of these are going in north as well.
Right, sure.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I think we have a couple more comments. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was curious if there is any effort partnering with Minneapolis Public Schools around educating youth and getting them out into the community gardens and their hands in that soil again and connecting up with their food.
I'm involved in meetings with the Minneapolis Public School System. They tend to they have their own program in terms of what they're doing. And so in terms of my role, what I try to do is add value. So they're doing some things there. We've got some really good youth programs here in the city. So my role is much more of a support person, maybe helping with planning and that sort of thing. But they've got Minneapolis Public Schools doing a really good job in terms of what they're serving in the schools and then looking at the gardens. So we haven't had to take a lead on that because they've already got their own people doing that, and we just try to help where we can in terms of augmenting.
Great, thank you.
And I know that the group certainly has reached out to the public schools. We've even had a meeting and a presentation from the schools at their, where they make the, I forget the name of the facility, but where they prepare the lunches, nutrition center. And actually, they've been pretty amazing in trying to get more local fresh produce in their schools, in their salad bars, and coming up with recipes that they even serve the kids. So, but I think that's a good point, and that's an area where we could keep growing and doing more. Councilmember Frye, did you have another question, or? No. Okay. Well, I will then go ahead and move this to be received and filed, and really thank everybody here. One of the great things I think about the Food Council is that it brings different people from the community together, but also puts them around the same table with city staff, and I really appreciate the city staff that are there. And then when there's a problem or an issue or something we need to work on, it's proven to be very successful for us because we hear those different perspectives and strategies and all that knowledge. So it's fantastic, and I've been honored to be the council's representative on the Food Council, and I'm glad I can continue doing so this year. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. And we'll segue now into our next discussion item. Thank you all very much. This is a very interesting item, though. Might be even interesting to Food Council people who are interested in gardening and produce and composting, because it's about biochar composting and a demonstration project that we're planning. And I'm going to ask Mr. Doughton from Inspector Environmental Services to give us a brief presentation then about this interesting partnership we're developing with Shakopee Medokatan Sioux Tribal Community for biochar composting. Welcome.
Chair Gordon, council members, appreciate the opportunity to make this presentation for this interesting project that we have proposed. First of all, like you said, my name is Jim Doughton. I'm an environmental inspector with Environmental Services in the Health Department. With me today is just arrived is Mike Witt from the Medokatan Sioux community. Mike is the natural resource manager for the tribe. So welcome, Mike. Really appreciate the opportunity. As I said, first of all, getting nice to get a basis from where we're starting from. Back in the 1950s, researchers in the Amazon rainforest found areas that were of soil that were black and rich and lush and supporting a lot of vegetation. The picture on the left is what we remember from middle school and high school biology classes about rainforest soils being depleted of all nutrients. And then they stumbled upon this rich black earth that's been producing for about 2,000 years. Turns out this is a legacy item from the Indians of the Amazon rainforest who found a way to enrich the soils. Backwards engineering it in today's world, we come up with what they called it Terra Preta, which is Portuguese for black soil. Go ahead, thank you. What we found out is it's an ingredient called biochar, which is a fancy name for charcoal used in agricultural purposes. You can see it's one of the great things about biochar is that normally waste materials, waste agricultural products, wood, etc., after it's used and it falls to the forest floor, it degrades and turns right back into carbon dioxide. It continues to feed the carbon cycle. And as we add more carbon with fossil fuels, we get global warming or environmental climate change. With biochar, we stabilize that. We take the waste material, heat it, stabilize that carbon, and take it out of the carbon cycle for up to 3,000 years. And some of the waste gases given off are actually used in the process to make it, or make cogeneration biofuel or cogeneration electricity or biofuel. And so it removes the carbon from the carbon cycle, and it helps mitigate the effects of climate change. Thanks. Some of the benefits that we're seeing in the past few years of biochar, and this is an initiative that's been going on worldwide. It's been a latecomer to the United States. It's very widely used right now in Europe, Asia, Australia, sub-Saharan Africa. It reduces the carbon footprint of agriculture. And one of the ways it does it, besides sequestering carbon for over 1,000 years, is it also reduces a lot of the greenhouse gases that are associated with normal agriculture, modern agricultural production, such as nitrous oxide. It also reduces nitrate runoff from agriculture by up to 80%, and as we all know, that contributes to the dead zone down in the Gulf of Mexico. It reduces erosion by about 2/3. It increases the drought resistance of crops, and as we see changes in our climate, with increased precipitation in May and June, followed by periods of drought, this is going to be important for keeping a stable local food access or food source in the city. It reduces stormwater runoff. Bigger, better plants take up more water, as well as the charcoal itself absorbs water for those drought periods. So it overall reduces the amount of runoff from precipitation into a watershed and helps stabilize and normalize the hydrologic flow into the watershed. It increases soil fertility and health. It provides not only a place for the carbon to store nutrients, but it actually enhances the microbial activity of the soil, making it more fertile. And both microbes and, I'm a geologist, I have to say, mycorrhizal fungus, is that right, Mike? Microbes, thanks. I can't get my tongue around it. And lastly, it increases, can dramatically increase crop yield if properly used. Some of the urban challenges that we face today that biochar can address. We have issues with health in the minority communities based on availability of healthy foods. We also want to decrease the disparity between minority groups and the white community in access to healthy, locally grown foods. And one of the things with this is being able to grow culturally appropriate foods, not just the choices that are on the shelf. We have some very marginal urban soils associated in the city, and we're trying to convert this into community farms and community gardens and urban farming. But much of it is not really good for agricultural use. This will help restore that balance to the soil. Additionally, we have a problem with the emerald ash borer coming on through the city and decimating the urban forest. What is not really known is the public health effect that it actually has on it. The role of trees in reducing air pollution, in particular particulates, is really has not been well understood or well communicated. But areas that have been hit with the emerald ash borer have seen increases in mortality associated with heart disease and lung problems. This can actually provide an alternative, and also the storm damage we'd seen in recent years. But used properly, this material as well can help restore the urban forest and increase its resistance to climate change. Next page. How this all began is kind of an interesting thing. If your eyes will observe there, You may notice that that is the Asian honeybee instead of the European honeybee. I know, very good catch. But in Afghanistan, a couple of years ago, I was working with the Afghan government in restoring the Asian honeybee to southern Afghanistan, where it had been eliminated 30 years prior, and trying to restore agricultural production in the south. Coming back to the United States, I worked on some other projects as well, dealing with soil carbon and water issues in Afghanistan, trying to rebuild the agricultural sector. Back in the United States, as very fortuitous, Patrick here had worked with in the Peace Corps with bees as well. And together with our friends in sustainability, we wanted to get some bees up on City Hall. And lucky for us, Mike Witt with the tribe had started their beekeeping program and had built it up to 120 hives over the years. So the tribe was Metawakan and Sioux worked with us, donated 2 hives that we now see on our green roof at City Hall, and we've been working closely with Mike and and his staff and keeping those bees healthy and happy. Well, I had this idea in Afghanistan while we're trying to restore the soil carbon, where I discovered the miracle of biochar and was trying to establish the biochar project at the village levels in southern Afghanistan. Patrick had a great idea, why don't we go talk to Mike? He's got the commercial compost facility with Metawakan and Sioux down to Shakopee. So we took Mike out and we had a cup of coffee and kind of discussing some ideas about how we can work on some projects together to increase agricultural production in the urban community. So through this, we came up with this proposal. The city has purchased biochar using the money that we raise from pollution control impact fees from businesses. It's one of the purposes is try to reduce pollution within the city. When mixed or charged, as we say, with compost, biochar turns into a very powerful soil amendment. The Metawakan Sioux have provided the compost and also some land for demonstration projects. And together, we've been working at the compost facility to create this soil amendment. The city and the Metawakan and Sioux, we've also been working with various community agencies to set up a demonstration project in the urban core on ways to reduce food equity issues, or correct food equity issues and food justice issues within our vulnerable populations, and found a way to bring that into the urban core. One of the aspects of this, we are setting up we have an agreement through the Indian Health Board with the 24th Street Urban Farming Coalition to establish a test plot or demonstration site in the Phillips neighborhood. It composed of 3 test plots, one that is just with no treatment, one with compost only, and one with biochar and compost. And we intend to let the group manage the site, raise the crops, and measure the results. And then we're going to help with education and outreach to bring the information together throughout the community. Just want to show a comparison here. On the left on your screen is, you can see just a plain soil. This is what the vegetation looks like if you just plant it in the ground. NPK is just short for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and it's a fertilizer. And on the right is biochar and fertilizer, and you see the dramatic increase in yield that we see. Next slide. And again, here's a demonstration showing just fertilized field, and then fertilizer and biochar. In this case, the fertilizer is the compost and provides the charge, and they work synergistically together and really enhance agricultural output while reducing a myriad of environmental concerns. Some of the stakeholders we've been working with on this project include the Indian Health Board, the 24th Street Urban Farming Coalition, they run the farm, the Women's Environmental Initiative, and the Dream of Wild Health help support the 24th Street Urban Farming Coalition, but are also interested in biochar in themselves. We are working through the Department of Agriculture right now on a sustainable agricultural grant, and we hope to expand the program to help those organizations as well. Homegrown Minneapolis has been very helpful with us in working in ways to provide education and outreach throughout the community, including other areas of need in order to help the 24th Street Urban Farming Coalition provide education outreach and a place for people to come and learn of this technique and how to bring it back to their own neighborhoods. Morton Arboretum has been very key to us in providing advice. They've been working on this. It's located outside of Chicago. They've been working on this issue for a few years now. I've been tapping their brains, Dr. Sharon Brock, down at the Arboretum there, to provide technical assistance in getting our project going. We're also working with the University of Minnesota and the Minneapolis Park Board in developing a test of how to use this material in improving the urban forest as we go through an aggressive tree replacement. University of Minnesota Extension has agreed to provide education and outreach to this project in order to bring it through their Master Gardening program and in order to bring it out throughout the community. And finally, the United States Department of Agriculture has agreed to support this project and is providing technical assistance and analytical support in order to ensure that the food that we grow is safe and it'll be part of a larger national project. So in conclusion, this project is a means to provide food equity and address food equity issues throughout the community, as well as address several environmental concerns. We are excited, it's the health department, to work with Metawakan and Sioux in providing these services to the residents of Minneapolis and to the greater community. Are there any questions?
I don't see any questions. There are some questions coming, but maybe you could just explain to me what the city's going to be delivering, or what the city's going to be getting, or what's exactly our role. Are we committing now to take trucks and pick stuff up and deliver it? Are we committing to use some of our funds to purchase the biochar? Because the report says no cost, but then you also mentioned this pollution and fee that we get.
Yes.
So just maybe clarify some of the details a little bit.
Yes, Chairman, to the best of my ability, and if anybody can help me in the back, I'd be greatly appreciated. But we have purchased biochar that is down at the Metawakan and Sioux community or composting facility, and that was using through the environmental initiative money that we have through the pollution control annual billings. And so we do have that material purchases mainly through cost savings through other projects that we found the money and purchased the material. The Metawakan and Sioux is providing in kind, providing the compost and treatment and mixing of the materials. I'm currently negotiating some terms in order to get the material transported up to the sites to avoid further exposure to the city.
So just pause there for a second.
Yes, sir.
So the biochar that we purchased, who did we purchase that from? And it sounds like they're not making it at their facility up here in Minnesota.
Correct, sir. As of this time, there's no facilities in Minnesota or the neighboring states that are manufacturing it because it is a new issue and is coming towards the Midwest. There are several proposals to build the plants, but they haven't been made yet. They're not been created yet. One across the United States have been active in biochar groups, both at the national and regional level. Went and identified several vendors, such as the beetle-killed pine out in the Rocky Mountains. They've set up several plants out there and are creating char. The char that we are getting right now, or we have, is waste material from sawmills. It's white oak down from central Arkansas and southern Missouri. And that's where our material came from. And there's some others out in the east, just some problems with the quality of the material out there. They've been using pallets and other unsustainable things that we believe wouldn't be inappropriate sources for biochar. One of the long-term goals is to create and show that this is an effective technique, and we're not the only ones working on this, but to create the market up here in order to create the conditions where we can build it and sustain a source close to home.
So are we responsible for delivering the charged biochar, whatever we'd call it, to the community gardens?
At this time, sir, yes, we are. However, I'm trying to find ways, either donations or in kind, in order to get the material moved. I just haven't, that final detail has not been worked out yet, sir. It's still under process. It's under work.
And Councilmember Glidden has a question or comment.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And well, this is a fascinating presentation. I guess when you say no financial impact, I guess how I interpret that, so tell me if I'm right, is just that what you're doing to date is kind of something that is able to be accommodated within the department's budget without requesting additional funds. So I'm not, I guess that certainly is fair enough. I also am sort of interpreting this as a little bit of a pilot. It's a little bit of an experiment, and that you are doing more than sometimes happens to update us at the council level due to the very interesting nature of this pilot. I really am not quite clear on, and maybe you're not quite clear either, since it is kind of in this very early phase, but how the length of time it takes to kind of make whatever is the healthier compost material that then gets transported to help remediate unhealthy soils. So how much is actually produced, and how much would we anticipate to be produced? And then I also was a little bit interested that you didn't talk about city-owned lots. You talked about community gardens, and so there may be also an issue here about where is there the greatest need, and where should we be focusing on remediating soil. And I guess maybe you have a plan about that right now. But I think it would be good to kind of understand what we might be trying first off. And maybe we're not really talking about large amounts of stuff. I'm sure there's a large interest in how to get the best kind of compost you can to remediate soils.
Chair Gordon, Councilmember Glidden, I appreciate these questions. And yes, short answer is yes. We are actually having a discussion with Public Works and Problem Properties and other departments within the city about uses of this, and they're very interested in it, in how to use it across the city. Some of the things we have looked at, including stabilizing vacant lots, say in the north side where you have houses that have been demoed, and we have a problem with maintaining adequate cover on them. And so we end up with places that are bare soil, erosion, eyesores on the north side. So using this material, we can help stabilize the vegetation on the site. And we're looking at ways, working with Problem Properties in order to incorporate that onto there. We've had discussions on looking at it at other places on other city properties, and in order to better use this material. It's actually a lot larger than just the community gardens and the discussions that we've had. Every time, it seems like every week, there's a new opportunity that opens up, and once we talk about it, it's like, wow, we can really use this over here. And so we're going to be looking at ways that we can incorporate this on in, and not just within the community gardens and the urban farm, but we want to make sure we should demonstrate this to the urban farmers as well. One of the things that every time we turn around, it just keeps growing and growing as far as the aspects go. The park department is meeting with the tree advisory board on Thursday to discuss this further about ways that we can work with the park board and the university in doing the study and finding a cost-effective way to improve the urban canopy, and particularly the difficult terrain that we have with boulevard trees. We have an issue with high mortality and runoff issues, et cetera. And I believe this is a way that we can improve the environment as far as the boulevard trees and the public health aspects, as well as the environmental aspects. There are a lot of potential for this here, but it is not limited to just what we were talking about in this short discussion. It's been it's an evolving issue, and it's been changing. They get a little frustrated with here because I keep walking in with another bright idea, or somebody hears something and they'd like to get involved with it. So the partnerships have continued to grow, and we hope to do is get the momentum going where this can go, and we as a city can back out of being this principal role. We'll look at it, we're priming the pump and showing the way, lighting the path. And once people start going on the path, it'll gain momentum on its own.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this sounds very exciting and incredibly interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing what the results are at our test plots. One question I did have is that it looked like there's some land being provided outside of Minneapolis by the Metawakan Sioux, And I was curious about that. And then would part of the Minneapolis pollution impact fees be going towards the pilot on that land outside of the city? Because that's kind of my impression based off of the PowerPoint.
Chair Gordon, Councilmember Johnson, I just want to backtrack just a little bit for Councilmember Glidden. One part of the question I didn't answer on yours is actually we should be seeing the results on the effects on the soil fairly early in this. In fact, once it gets after the grounds the plants have germinated, we should start seeing results that early, and we're going to be monitoring those results as part of our study to show the efficacy. And hopefully we see some good positive results. And from the research I've been seeing, as long as we work with charging the biochar, and second part of that is that we are working down at the tribe in the right place and time to place this into their process and manufacturing the compost, so that by the time the compost is mature, the biochar has been incorporated and has been charged and absorbed the nutrients and is ready to be applied to the product. I've been working with Cornell University in developing the right ratio on how to mix the char and at what point in order to enter it into the process to make sure that we do this right. I'll get back to you, Councilmember Johnson, and I can't even remember the question, to be honest.
All right, well, no problem. I'll repeat that. So in the presentation, one of the things that it looked like that I saw in there is that the Metawakan Sioux own land outside of Minneapolis, and that potentially our Minneapolis pollution impact fees would go towards a pilot, not only in Minneapolis, of course, but outside of our city to a different pilot. I'm guessing in Prior Lake. I don't really know. And I was wondering if you could tell me if I'm correct in that or if I'm incorrect. Or
It's one of the concepts we have been discussing with the Metawakan is they have a community garden out of the county at Wazupi, which is they grow, and that's part of this too, is growing heirloom seeds that traditionally have been in the Native American diet, and we're trying to restore the Native American diet. And one of the things they do is working down there is they're providing the compost and the materials to be able to test out its efficacy and work out some of the details there on their own land and be able to provide a better service for the cities within the city. But Mike, is there anything you'd like to add on that?
No, I mean, it was great. So we're providing, it's about 5 parts compost. You might want to step up to the microphone so everybody can hear you, and then you can be broadcast as well. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. The idea was that the tribe would be providing about 5 parts compost to 1 part biochar. And we really don't have identified experimental units yet, but if it did take place on the reservation, it would be at the Wazupi, our organic vegetable farm. And they'd be, when we talk sample plots, we're talking about 3 plots, 3 to 6 plots about as big as this table. So pretty small sample size.
all right, excellent. And you did say that the Metawakan Sioux are providing the compost. It looks like the community agrees to provide some compost as well. Is that we're all bringing compost?
We were afraid of the language that this might be a little bit confusing. We just changed the MOU on Friday. They got the feedback from the legal department at the Metawakan Sioux community, and it's been reviewed by Joe Fussy on the city attorney staff. But the word community in this case refers to the Metawakan Sioux community.
Gotcha.
So we were afraid of it. I was going to change it in the presentation, but I figured that's going to cause some confusion because of the similarity between Minneapolis and in this case, the tribal community.
Gotcha.
So, yes, and that should answer that part.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Cano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. This amazing PowerPoint that you just showed us, will it be available to the public? I don't see it on the city's website just yet, so wasn't sure.
Chairman Gordon and Councilman McConnell, I have provided it to the city clerk so that we can provide a link to it.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One last thing, I did notice it says it will be used to up to 5 urban farms. And I'm just wondering, have we identified, you mentioned one in the Phillips community?
Yes, Chairman Gordon. And we're working on other sites. The Minneapolis Homegrown, Rusted Minneapolis Homegrown has some ideas on bringing it into the north side and some other locations we think would be great to bring it into other parts of the community. We've been in those discussions with them in order to identify those potential sites, but we wanted to bring some leeway in beyond the 24th Street urban farming site, so we have some leeway in the system to be able to work with homegrown and bring a better example throughout the community and be inclusive.
I appreciate that, and I thought it would be nice to just highlight there's still potential for it to go somewhere else, and if people outside of this meeting want to make suggestions, we're open to that. Councilmember Bender, did you have a question?
Thank you. Just a quick detail. Is biochar something that's applied one time per growing season, or is it applied once and then not needed again, or how often would it be applied to each site?
It would be applied to each site about every 3,000 years. Being a little facetious. But the material is very stable. Is recalcitrant is the technical term that I hear bantied about. It's kind of impressive when you walk into a room with 20 people that are talking about biochar. I'm the only one without a PhD. It's a little intimidating, as I should say. But one of the things on this is it stays stable for a long period of time. And you do once apply it once, and we're mixing it with the compost, and it really turns it into a powerful tool. And from there, it really doesn't need replenishing. The only thing is you may have some normal, you mix it into the normal root zone, and you may end up with some normal wear and tear as you take vegetables out, as you get a little bit of erosion, in order to freshen it up. But we're talking over a period of years, many years, and it'll stay present in the soil. Like I said, in the Terra Preta soil is about 2,500 years old, and it's only continued to grow. It isn't just the soil, the carbon that we put into here, but it actually increases carbon beyond that in bringing additional sources of carbon in. A mature prairie can hold more carbon than a forest can as far as its ability to mitigate climate change. And this helps restore soil carbon at a much faster rate than nature can on its own.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the fascinating report, and also for the taking the initiative to explore this opportunity. I'm glad this partnership has been developed, and I think we'll all be looking forward to learning more about it. I'll move forward the recommendation then that we authorize the execution of this no-cost memorandum of understanding with the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux tribal community. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Now we have three more discussion items before us. I'm gonna be aiming for about 10 minutes each, but we'll see how this goes. We may actually need a little bit more time than that because some of these are definitely very interesting and very exciting. The first up, and maybe Patty Bowler, are you going to start this one? This is on the UCare Skyway Senior Center. And there's a lot of history here about our Skyway Senior Center. This is a partnership we've been involved in a long time. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Councilmember Gordon and members of the committee. My name is Patty Bowler with the Health Department, and the purpose of this agenda item is to formally accept continued funding from UCare for financial and in-kind support for the UCare Skyway Senior Center. And with me today is our coordinator, Sarah Goodnow, and also Gita Worster, who is the Senior Vice President for Public Affairs and Marketing, Gita, and Dan Ness, who's the Marketing Director. So before I ask Gita to come up and just say a few words about the partnership, for the purposes of the new council members, the Skyway Senior Center, it's located on the Skyway level, and it's just around the bend from the Target store and on the way to the University of St. Thomas. It was started in 2001 as a partnership with the city and other sponsors, and also Ryan Company continues to be a sponsor and provides rent free of charge. In 2013, the Skyway Senior Center recorded over 17,000 visitors, and the average daily count is about 74 individuals per day. There are daily exercise classes, opportunities for socialization, reading, computer use. Those are all really very popular activities. What should also be noted is that the center has over 25 very active volunteers, as well as an advisory committee and a Friends of the Skyway Senior Center. They do additional fundraising for the center. We have a mailing list of over 4,000 individuals, and I think Sarah passed out the chatter newsletter. So that's one key way that we communicate with our constituents. So I would like to ask Geeta to come up here to just talk briefly about their support.
All right, thank you. Well, welcome so much, and we so appreciate the support that you've given to this project in the past.
Thank you for letting me talk for just a minute, and they said just a minute. So we're a nonprofit health plan, actually corporate-based in Minneapolis, and we've been really pleased at the partnership working with the Minneapolis Department of Health, but also the many organizations and volunteers that have come together. I encourage all of you to come over there and see the center and the people that are being served there. It's truly individuals that are very passionate about helping in folks that many of whom are isolated. They don't have support systems to take care of them. So this is a real resource for them and for others that just need a little bit of help in figuring out what resources are available. So I think it's one of those very good examples of a public-private partnership that can come together with various interested parties and really make something much bigger than any organization on their own could do. So thank you for letting us participate with this.
Oh, well, you're so welcome, and thank you. I think this is a good model that we could see other places in our city, too, as well.
And May is Older Adults Month, so if we ever get to May, you'll all be invited over to the center. But as Geeta mentioned, feel free to come anytime. Are there any questions?
I don't see any questions at this time.
Thank you.
And good to see you here, Sarah. We miss you. Sarah used to be a policy aide here at the city before she took her position over at UCare Senior Center. I'll move approval then of the staff recommendation to accept the generous contribution of $186,000 from UCare for annual operating expenses and to increase our appropriation so that we can reflect the receipt of the funds, and also authorizing the health department to adopt and enforce a code of conduct as recommended by the city attorney's office. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you so much, and thanks again for being here and staying and hearing all that other interesting stuff. The next item has to do with our animal adoption process update. Dan Nijelik from Animal Care and Control is here to give us an update about our adoption, particularly relating to some of our dogs. Welcome.
Excellent. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and council members. Dan Nijelik, Deputy Director of Minneapolis Animal Care and Control. As Council Member Gordon mentioned, I'm here today to talk about our new animal adoption initiative. And so today I'm going to talk about the exciting work of MAC staff and community members on this initiative. In September of 2013, the City Council authorized Minneapolis Animal Care and Control to make all adoptable animals available to the general public. The major energy behind this was our bully breeds, or sometimes referenced our power breeds, and ensuring they were also available to the general public for adoption. Our requested funding was approved in the 2014 city budget, and we subsequently initiated a project team. The project team is comprised of MAC staff broken into 4 teams. We've broken the process down. And we have intake, we have behavioral and health evaluations, we have adoption transfer, and then finally the leadership implementation team. The project is managed by Jeanette Wiedemeyer-Bauer. In addition, Jody Molnar-Hansen from the City Coordinator's Office is providing us business process improvement support for the project. Expectations for the project. We're very excited about this initiative. Once again, finding more forever homes for the animals that come into our care. So the expectation, ensure all adoptable animals are available to the general public. 2, we want to improve the health and well-being of animals in our care. 3, we want to evaluate and facilitate timely and successful placement of sheltered animals. And 4th, we want to improve the efficiency and effectiveness in handling animals in our care. Our whole goal through this process is to take a fresh look at all our policies and practices related to the handling of animals sheltered at MAC. The initiative will look at the entire process from the time an officer picks up an animal or an animal comes to us to the shelter to the time it goes out the shelter. One of the important parts of all this is engaging the community for all their great ideas. We currently have 15 focus groups scheduled. A number of those meetings have already happened. They involve different stakeholders and interested parties to help us think through the reality of making all adoptable animals available to the general public. You will see a schedule of those events. Tonight, as you know, is the one in regards to individuals identified by yourselves in terms of talking through what is making all the adoptable animals available to the general public. But we got 15 scheduled. We have a few more coming up. At our focus groups, we are engaging rescue groups that place pit bulls, dog owners of power breeds, volunteers with MAC, members of the Minnesota Herpetological Society, and Chicken Run Rescue, as well as many other groups. We are engaging community from a wide variety of perspectives and drawing upon animal shelters in Minnesota, Wisconsin for best practices. Anyone interested can always go on our website and send a message or look to be involved in a focus group. Just go on the website and you'll see on the front page. Just some big timelines that we're working on. In March, we have a software called Chameleon. Our vendor will be in town helping us to look at how we can use our software to make that happen. In April, we'll be bringing on a new position, which was what the funding was for, which will be a lead animal control officer position. This person will be largely responsible for the adoption screening and the volunteers working on this process. In addition, we'll be coming back to yourselves to give you a more thorough update on where we are and where we're going and what we're proposing. And then finally, May is when we're really targeting the launch of the new animal adoption process for the city of Minneapolis. That is that. In addition to in your packet, you'll see the project charter of which the group is using to move forward on this new initiative.
So I have one question. Between now and May, in the full implementation, are we doing anything to handle some of the power breed dogs, or in this period? I think every so often we get emails and there's alerts about a certain dog that some people care a great deal about, and I know that we're developing this process that's going to help us get more dogs adopted. But in the interim, are we trying to take any other steps so that we can avoid having to euthanize any dogs in the meantime before we're ready?
Mr. Chair, council members, and I can get specific numbers in terms of what is going on with our power breeds or bully breeds. We are continuing to work with our many rescue groups to place these animals, and I think that's fairly successful. There's been a couple emails about a couple dogs, one of which was a recent dog, which actually there was indications of behavioral issues, and then when we went to microchipped, bit the officer who was microchipping. And so we will continue to look at placing as many animals as we can to move away from our current policy without having some other safety checks, jeopardizes the welfare of the public as well as the animal. Case in point, if we change some of our practice around bully breeds, my concern is some of the people who we don't want having some of these pit bulls may be actually coming in because we don't have the screening process in place to ensure the right person is placing that animal or taking that animal home. So for the benefit of the animals as well as the public, we haven't changed anything until we can get this process done. But like I mentioned, we have 48 rescue organizations we work with. We work with them on a regular basis in the placement of animals. I will get you some updated numbers in terms of from January 1st to the present in terms of the placement of animals in our bully breed area.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I had two questions, really. The first is, do we have any early indications from this whole process of some changes we may want to see in there? And then in particular with this dog that came up over the weekend and has been very discussed, this dog Squish, I'm curious if there's any potential for change of process around microchipping. I know that one of my colleagues mentioned that her dog, it was put under while they microchipped because it can be distressful for the dogs, and then that way there is no risk of that dog biting or reacting to a situation where it feels some pain and is obviously in a stressful environment and stressful situation in the first place.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Johnson, all that will be looked at and is being looked at. Sort of give you a quick, to bring everybody up to speed with the dog, people are referring to as Squish. It came to our shelter January 5th. It was impounded as a stray. Initially thought it was injured. As you remember, it was fairly cold back then. We brought it in. We made it available for rescues on January 13th. And nobody came forward. On January 21st, we had somebody indicating they were an owner outside the city of Minneapolis. In corresponding emails and faxes, we determined that it, in fact, was not their dog. So we then made it again available to the rescues on January 28th. On February 5th, our veterinarian, Dr. Durr, who's been in shelter medicine for more than 20-some years, has worked on a number of animal behavioral assessment tests in that for a variety of shelters and involved in the science, was seeing that the dog was deteriorating. One of the problems that we see the longer a dog is in a shelter environment, behavioral issues will start to exhibit themselves, especially with a dog with an unknown history. We don't know for sure where this dog came from. So it was already showing signs of deterioration. When staff went to microchip, the dog then did actually bite one of my staff, causing bruising, and also attempted to bite another one. In regards to microchipping and sedation, a number of factors need to be looked at. When you sedate a dog, you also still need to give it a shot. So you're still looking at a similar, there's ways to look at. You have to look at what does that mean in regards to some of the complications that can go with sedation. You have to look at when a dog is sedated, when it's coming out, some of the behavior may be less inhibited. So looking at all that will be looked at as a part of it. One of the things I think to really look at is the sooner we can get a dog evaluated and placed and out of the shelter, the better for the dog and the more likely a successful outcome. What this process will do is decrease the time adoptable animals will be in our shelter. The whole idea with the process is the sooner when the dog comes in, we will have a system in place to assess behaviorally and from a health standpoint. So we can clearly determine, is this dog going to be adoptable? Is it a transfer dog or is it an unplaceable dog? The sooner we can do that, the more likely we can get dogs out the front door. If we decrease the time that the animal's in the shelter, it's much more likely they're going to go out the front door in a successful placement. And that's really the focus. And how we do that with the earlier behavioral and health assessments and you bringing that in earlier and then looking at how our procedure around microchipping that work will make us more successful in those placements.
Great. I really appreciate efforts, especially to get animals placed earlier into homes and to get them out of that environment as well if their behavior is deteriorating. So with the sedation part and all of that, perhaps there's an opportunity to muzzle animals. I don't know if this has happened before with other dogs where they've bit during the microchipping. And so maybe there's some other ways we can look at that, and we can certainly have those conversations offline. And then that other piece was really if there's any early lessons being learned, things that are coming up during these focus groups where we think we have some really great potential policy changes that we've identified and that we'll move forward with looking at.
Right. Mr. Chair, Councilmember Johnson, the other thing about this initiative, which we're really excited about, is actually having the resources to do some of the things we've wanted to do. One of the challenges, when we behaviorally assess an animal, it's going to run on a spectrum. It's not adoptable or not. It's adoptable, rescue group, and then unplaceable. With this is our goal is to identify those dogs that clearly can go out to the general public and the placement will be successful. But we're going to have a group of animals that have behavioral or health issues, which a placement into a general public home might not be the best for the animal. We're going to have the time now using our assessment tools to define those animals and then work with our rescue partners and say, okay, if we bring in a dog, let's say that has some minor aggression issues or food protectiveness around that, food aggression, do we have rescue groups that have a program in place to take and work with that animal for 6 to 8 months and then place it? Now we're looking at successful placement because one of the things we have to do first and foremost, I believe, at Animal Care and Control is to ensure the safety of the public. We don't want to place an animal that has behavioral issues and it's going to be non-successful placement because we've heard stories of people who have adopted animals for different shelters, and then they get home and they've made that emotional connection to the dog, but they are now tied to a dog that they cannot necessarily control well, and they're always feeling obligated to, and they feel like they've been given an unfair burden to now take care of this animal. We want to make sure people understand the animal they're getting, and it's going to be a successful placement. And I think with this new initiative and the resources we have, we can assess the animals better and then say, this is a great general public dog. It's not a risk to the public. This is a dog that clearly needs some care and attention. We have our rescue partners who have provided us with plans and protocols of how they're going to work with these animals. Now we can ensure their successful placement too.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you very much. I don't see any other questions, and I see that you're expecting to come back to report again in March on this to the committee. I appreciate that. And is the community meeting tonight, that's not open to the public, that's a focus group that's scheduled, and everybody's already been invited, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, appreciate that. All right, well, thank you very much. I think we can receive and file this report then without any discussion. All those in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and then we have one more item, the lucky group that got to sit here for the last item. I apologize for the wait, but I hope it was interesting. But this is about the One Minneapolis Fund. This is a project that I think committee members might be interested in learning a little bit more about, and so we saved it for a little bit of discussion for you. Howard's here to give us a brief presentation.
Mr. Chair and committee members, I am Howard Blinn with the Neighbor and Community Relations staff. I'm going to give a brief overview of the program, and then we also have some commission members from the Neighbor and Community Engagement Commission that would like to say a few things about the program. And the reason they're here is much of the work on this One Minneapolis Fund is done by the commission, and I think they all want to speak, or we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
Again, this is a program that provides small grants to community-based organizations, primarily for leadership development and community engagement activities, with the overall goal of broadening participation in civic affairs throughout the city. As I mentioned, much of the work on the program in terms of setting up the RFP and reviewing the projects that are submitted is done by the commission. The first year was just about this time last year. We issued a request for proposal, and we received 24 applications, I think, which is a pretty good indication of the demand for this type of program within the city. We had $62,000 available, so we were only able to fund 3 of those applications. And they are the Pillsbury Wait House, which is doing leadership training with Latino residents in the Pillsbury community, the Lao Assistance Center, which is doing much of the same kind of work in the Lao community, primarily in the north side, and then the Conflict Resolution Center, which is doing work with youth to promote civic engagement. All of those projects, we received about $20,000. In the second year of the program, we have a little more money. We have $80,000, which will allow us to fund a few more projects going forward. So the schedule is to release this RFP later this month. We'll have applications due in April. And again, we anticipate quite a demand for these types of grants. And then we'll be back to this committee in May with recommendations for funding. And again, the recommendations will come out of the Neighborhood and Community Engagement Commission. So again, we're asking for authorization to issue the request for proposal at this time. And we have with us Kenya McKnight, Jeff Strand, and Andy Hortolosa. And I'll ask them to make a few comments on the program.
We're delighted that finally we have you to ourselves. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And members of the committee. First of all, I'm a city council appointee, so you're getting your money's worth for appointing me to this commission. And we've done all this work, and for the first time this year, we actually have developed a tool that General Motors, NASA is using to decide as to who will get the grants. So we're putting a lot of rigor into this committee. And Ms. McKnight?
Jeff Strand. I'm District 1 elected representative to the Neighborhood and Community Engagement Commission.
So I want to thank the council for having this opportunity. I want to thank the outgoing council for supporting the One Minneapolis Fund amount in the budget. However, the commission had been hopeful of larger allocation of funding. And I think we're really energized by the potential for greater synergy with collaborations between neighborhood organizations and cultural and community organizations. And as a matter of fact, that's coming up in our conversations and dialogues with the proposed Community Innovation Fund, the 9 listening sessions that are being held. So thank you.
So it's so good to see all of you in person. Kenya McKnight, I'm a resident of Near North, resident of the city for the past 30 years, and a district commissioner, 5th as an elected NCUC person. I just want to give you just a little bit more backdrop. The conflict resolution project that we supported last year was out of a response of the conflicts that happened with the African American and Somali community at South High School. So it was really good to be able to support an initiative that would help youth kind of resolve their conflicts. But we're grateful for the increase in our funding from $60,000 to $80,000, but I also want to encourage you to think about increasing that even more, your next budget. Had it not been for this initiative, a lot of these local, culturally specific community groups and agencies would not otherwise be funded for their civic engagement work, which is this year is geared towards 3 different levels, whereas last year was kind of open and broad, where there was not a real intentional connection of making sure these groups or initiatives were connected to the city initiatives. And this year we've been very intentional about our focus and clarifying in the RFP that we are interested in seeing these communities and groups be connected to our boards and commissions, our neighborhood associations, as well as our block clubs and any other initiatives that our city is a part of. So we didn't want to create like silos. We want to create a more integrated strategy of how our One Minneapolis comes together. So that's part of what you're supporting. And we did it. We put a lot of work in on the RFP to make sure it was inclusive of multiple groups. But I guess the final thing is that, you know, again, just considering that $80,000 is good, but it wasn't a lot of money to support the many initiatives that we seen last year. And we were not able to refund all the initiatives that we supported last year. So we couldn't focus on sustainability. We thought it was in our best interest to spread the opportunity amongst new groups. And moving forward, we'd like to be able to look at how to really build the capacity of these initiatives that we're supporting, because 10 and 5 and 7,000 isn't really enough for the longevity of these projects. And some are new startups who are not as political, who don't have, you know, the strong grant writing and things like that. So we're investing in their capacity to strengthen their community engagement work. So just FYI. But thank you for your support. And I hope you accept our request to issue this RFP.
Thank you very much. I have I have a question, but I see that Councilmember Cano has a question too. Why don't you go ahead?
Well, thank you, Chairman. Thank you so much for being here to present on this issue. I'm really happy to see this come through. So I have a few questions. And Kenya, Commissioner Kenya, you spoke a little bit about this, and I'm not sure who the best person would be to answer this. What kind of partnership component is built into this grant application process and sort of distribution of resources in terms of if the Wheat House is going to get, you know, a particular amount of money, is there an implied or explicit or intentional component of this grant that involves the engagement of the neighborhood association that is there in that proximity?
Chair Gordon, Commissioner Cano. It is implied that in the case for the White House project and all of these projects, that they would work to coordinate with the neighborhood organizations. And in the case of that particular project, that is happening now. To ensure that not only are people trained in neighborhood activities, but there actually is an open door in those neighborhood organizations once they complete the program.
Okay. And then I noticed the maximum amount was lowered from, I think, 20 to 15,000. If you could talk a little bit more about that, why that is.
The intention there was to, again, fund more projects and to see if $15,000 as a pilot would be sufficient to do an annual leadership development program. It's very much a test case, but the primary purpose, again, was to broaden the number of projects that could be funded.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I just know, coming from, I have a nonprofit background, and there's just a lot of time and energy that goes into getting the resources, and it almost feels like the org might be putting in $15,000 worth of time into getting $15,000 back. So I was a little curious about that, and I'd be interested in getting feedback from folks about what that looks like. And then lastly, and maybe this is more a question for the council members, but also from your perspective as a staff in the departments, what is the plan to grow this effort? Going back to Commissioner McKnight's comments, I mean, I would really like to see more than $80,000 at the table. So I don't know if that's something Chairman Gordon could address, or you, or.
Well, I can speak to that by saying I'm quite certain in the budget submittal that we'll present later this year, you will see increased funding for this project. The precise number I can't say right now, but we did ask for more money last year. We will again this year. And again, the demand throughout the city for these types of projects is fairly great, so I think we can justify that.
Thank you.
So the one thing I think that came up last time, and it's come up a couple times, is there's a concern about this fund and the support that we give to neighborhood organizations. And if you read this, actually, if you get community participation program funding, you can't apply for these funds. So clearly it's not intended for neighborhood organizations. And I just want some clarity right now so everybody understands that this is coming from a separate funding source. It's separate funds, and the commission is not trying to say that this is more worthy of funding than neighborhood organizations or anything like that. And I think that was also some of the discussion in the budget, and it's some of it just in the big picture of things. How are we going to make sure to have enough money to support all of the ideas? So there was a balancing there, but you can maybe clarify.
Certainly, Councilmember Gordon. This fund is funded entirely from the city's general fund, and it was in the first year. It is in the second year. Any increase in funding that we request in the future would be from the city's general fund. The city's neighborhood programs, particularly the community participation program, the source of that funding is a consolidated tax increment financing district, which is dedicated solely for neighborhood programs. And so none of the projects funded out of this program, none of the funding is derived from that consolidated tax increment financing district source, which again is dedicated entirely for neighborhood organizations.
And I appreciate that, and I appreciate that that's the way the commission approached it and sought to fund it. It doesn't say that we can't use general funds to support neighborhood organizations more in the future either. And it also says that then the One Minneapolis funds are competing with Public Works, Police, Fire, and all these others. So there's lots of competition for the funds too, because it's all from the general fund. But all right, are there any other questions or comments about this? All right, well, yeah, Councilmember Bender, and it looked like Commissioner Strand maybe had a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, this may already be written into the RFP, but I was just looking for, could you just briefly describe the sort of reporting requirements that you have and how you're able to report back on the impact of these funds in organizations that I imagine might have varying capacities to do detailed reporting? And
Mr. Blinn.
Councilmember Gordon and Councilmember Bender. First of all, we're trying to keep this program, both the application process and the reporting process, as simple as possible. Again, there's not a large amount of money available. And we also provide assistance to smaller organizations that may not have the capacity to even submit an application. So we provide that. In terms of reporting, program recipients are required to do a 6-month report, which all have done. They're all very much along in their projects. and then a final report, both of which are relatively simple to complete. What we want to know is how did they perform in relation to the proposal that they submitted? What were some of the results? And more importantly, what can we take away from these projects to apply elsewhere in the city? I should also note that all three of the project recipients have presented before the Neighborhood and Community Engagement Commission, which really facilitated a great dialogue with the commissioners in terms of how, again, these programs can be applied elsewhere.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Strand, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, thanks, Chair Gordon and council members. And I just want to add a personal note that as a longtime neighborhood board member and as a longtime former NRP policy board member and current, that I think this gives us a great opportunity for neighborhood organizations to voluntarily decide to increase engagement with cultural and other community organizations. And that if you look to things like the framework for the future that I know not everyone ascribed to several years ago, but from the old NRP working group, I think there's a real opportunity. And for example, some neighborhoods like Shingle Creek Neighborhood Association is having a conversation with the Law Assistance Center about having a member of the cadre learning groups participate. And we're getting a presentation tomorrow night at our neighborhood association. So I think there's a real opportunity for synergies. There was a great deal of misinformation about the funding sources, and so I think it's really critical to make sure that the general fund nature of the support for One Minneapolis grants is always delineated, but there are opportunities going forward for existing programs like community participation and perhaps the Community Innovation Fund to provide even more opportunities for synergies. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And I'll just note that one of the things that's highlighted in the RFP is actually to increase involvement in city leadership groups, and then clearly city leadership groups include neighborhood organizations and our advisory boards and commissions and task forces, but neighborhood organizations are right in there, and I think this could be a great tool to actually help strengthen neighborhood organizations as well, which I think is what you were also saying, and I really appreciated seeing that in there. Are there any other comments that anyone would like to make? Yes, Ms. McKnight.
I just want to thank you, Councilmember Gordon. Just reiterate that part of our focus, or at least for me as a person of color in the city of Minneapolis, we did review the report that you all came up with, or that was done around the boards and commissions last year, that showed very insignificant, or I should say, there were a lack of people of color who participate in the boards and commissions in the city of Minneapolis. And we understand that there's a wide range of disparities here that are related to a number of different things in our city. So part of our interest and focus was about really valuing the cultural specific communities' ways of thinking and organizing themselves without necessarily relegating them to just necessarily just be a part of the neighborhood associations as their first approach, but figuring out how they work with themselves to build that bridge. So it's not a competitive thing. It's not an exclusive thing from neighborhood associations, but we do have to recognize that we're not greatly populated on the boards or the staffs of these neighborhood associations either. And so it is part of our responsibility to make sure that we meet people where they are. And that's why these communities are being invested in, whether they're groups or nonprofit agencies, to help support and build their capacity from where they are, and creating a bridge to enter into the city's processes of neighborhood associations, block clubs, as well as our boards and commissions. So I hope that our neighborhoods would see that as a value and not as a competition, because all of these groups exist within neighborhoods. And all of our commissioners, while some of us are not board members or staff of our neighborhood associations, we're all very involved in our communities. And lastly, I would say that for me, in my own community, our neighborhood association is not our primary go-to for our needs culturally in our community. And in fact, so many of us don't even know what neighborhood we live in. You ask us, we'll just tell you the geographical space. And so it's a process of building, and I just want to reiterate that, and I think that's really important for communities of colors in general. And so look at this as an investment and building people's information, knowledge, and skill capacity to engage into the larger picture that we're creating of One Minneapolis. That's it. Thanks.
Very good. Closing comments?
Just 1 minute. You know, inspiring stories come out of these funded organizations. We had 3 during the presentations. I mean, we were amazed by what they were able to do with the small funding that they get from us. And so for this commission and for this committee, I would like for you to consider really increasing the funding for this fund for, it's too late now for this year, but for next year. And they will come when I will see results of this funding, and you will actually see names you can't pronounce. You know, like right now it's easy, you know, easy, it's Gordon Johnson. Just think about it. So thank you very much for having us and for your time.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I don't see any other questions or comments. So I will move to authorize the Neighborhood Community Relations Director to issue the request for proposals and solicit applications. And then the commission will be authorized to review those proposals for funding and make the recommendations for the funding awards. And we'll get to see those recommendations again and probably approve whatever the commission brings forward. But, you know, it's up to us. Any discussion on that motion? And that part about us approving whatever they bring forward, it wasn't part of the formal motion. But it will come to the city council. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. And I think that concludes our business. So this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.